Mini episode 53 of the FDH Lounge is brought to you by Outside the Box Score, your home on the web for entertaining sports columns and videos. Follow them on the web at OutsideTheBoxScore.blogspot.com.
A long time ago, on a gloomy, wet Cleveland spring night, two men stand alone amidst the late-night drizzle. Their voices echo across the vacant station parking lot as they debate the merits of the great American radio show that have been missing for far too long. On that night, an idea was born. That idea became the FDH Lounge. Welcome to the FDH Lounge.
All right, Rick Morris, Kyle Ross here for another FDH Lounge mini episode. This one breaking down the NFL. We've been doing this on regular intervals here during the season on about a monthly basis or so. So taking our last look at the last couple of weeks of the regular season. By the time we get a chance to do this again, the playoff field will be underway. And we'll do the same thing that we did on the very, very, very recent mini episode for the NBA, breaking down those ones here by the FDH Power Rankings. And actually, here's a funny thing. You know what? I'm having a flashback to the Eric Bischoff tapings in Orlando. I think this one's going up ahead of the NBA one. So people are hearing what I said out of sequence.
Spoiler. Okay, there we go.
Spoiler alert on the NBA.
Yay, boo. Yes. The Nasty Boys don't win the tag titles for 2 more weeks. Yes.
All right. And when you listen to the NBA ones after these go up,
just start scratching your head and saying, what are these people doing?
Yes. We're doing it the same way for the NBA as for this one off the FDH Power Rankings. The Power Rankings, which were crafted by me, Rick Morris. So Kyle will be giving his thoughts on how these came out here.
If I get injured, by the way, now we'll have a Clash of Champions 24 situation, by the way.
Yes, got to get the belts off.
Yes.
All right, starting with the Power Rankings with 14 weeks of the NFL in the books, going into Week 15.
If I may, it's remarkable how similar our Power Rankings are.
Pretty similar,
Either great minds think alike. I mean, to me, at this point, I think we know, the pecking order. I mean, you could differ by a couple spots, but you know who the championship contenders are, you know who the pretenders are, and we know who's going to be in the playoffs almost and who's not. There's a couple spots that are up for grabs, but for the most part, I think I'm pretty confident on the 12 teams that are going.
That's true, yeah. We've got yours up posted as well here. You can find both of ours at the FDH Lounge Multimedia Magazine, the FDHLounge.blogspot.com. Both of these ones posted this week here in mid-December. The top tier, the way that I do my power rankings is I break them off into tiers here. I have one team by itself, obviously the Green Bay Packers, not merely because of the record, but how they're playing and how they're looking. I could see circumstances where I wouldn't have an undefeated team blocked off by themselves if there was anybody that seemed even remotely close. There just doesn't seem to be anybody that close on their heels at this point.
No, but I mean, they're certainly going to be favored over whoever assuming they make it to the Super Bowl, which is a big assumption. You shouldn't assume that. Mm-hmm. But, they'll be a favorite in the Super Bowl if they get there. It's amazing that has a team ever, I mean, it's not like I've been doing these for, 20 years and I've got a lot of history to lean on, but a team that you picked to win the Super Bowl before the season, like you and I picked Green Bay.
Yes.
Just go bell to bell, number one. I mean, at no point, at no point, and this I think is a mark in your favor, why you've got them by themselves in the top tier, and I agree with that. At no point during this year would there be any period where they would not be considered the best team.
No.
I mean it's bell to bell, man.
They have been, and that is notwithstanding a defense that hasn't looked as good as it looked last year when it surprised me and played better than that, but an offense which rates among the greatest in the history of the league, what they're doing this year.
The injury to Greg Jennings is something to watch. Minor chink in the armor. People bring up, with the four wide, you can't cover all, you just don't have the personnel, and no team really has the personnel in the secondary to cover all four of those guys. With the defense, I think that gets overplayed a little bit.
Right.
Because they're always ahead and they're giving up, they know how to create turnovers, which is key.
On a sad note for me personally, on a team that's already missing Peyton Manning, my pervert clown society team is crippled in my fantasy playoffs here without Greg Jennings. So
I lost Adrian Peterson and Matt Schaub.
Oh, okay.
And I'm out of the playoff. I was the second best team. I'm out as of last week.
Well, I still got one more team that's better than that one, but I'm sad about that. The second tier. I've got New Orleans number 2, Baltimore 3, New England 4, Pittsburgh 5, San Francisco 6, Houston 7. I want to start by asking you about Houston. I got them 2, you got them 5 in yours.
New Orleans.
Or New Orleans, I'm sorry. New Orleans, I got them 2, you got them 5. It's a thing where I look at it and say, I don't think anybody can beat Green Bay, but New Orleans is the one team I could at least make an argument for, because the only way you can beat Green Bay is getting into a shootout with them. New Orleans came up short under the best circumstances they're going to face, a very balmy opening night in Green Bay. New Orleans is a great team offensively and great historically like Green Bay, but Green Bay, it's interesting, and I joked about this last year when they were playing in the Super Bowl in Dallas. Green Bay is set up to be a dome team. They have such a great overwhelming offense. The difference between Green Bay and New Orleans is they can get it done in any conditions. New Orleans is a classic dome team that overperforms outside of the dome because they're so great, but that's different than being on the level Green Bay's on.
Yeah, and I think it's just because they're in the same conference, and I just don't buy them beating New Orleans is why I have them at 5. If I were to do a second tier, I would have your 2 through 5 and my 2 through.
Okay.
I have Baltimore at number 2.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh at 3, New England 4, New Orleans 5. That would be my second tier. Those are teams that potentially I think maybe could win the Super Bowl. New Orleans, they've looked great.
Okay.
Again, and they're indoors the rest of the year potentially until the NFC divisional playoffs, and I think there's a slight chance, Rick Morris, if you look at the schedule, that they could pass San Francisco and get that second bye in the NFC. I could see San Francisco losing 2 more times. They play this week against Pittsburgh. That's not a favorable match. Pittsburgh matches up well against San Francisco.
Right.
They're a similar team, and they're just better. And then they have 2 division road games to end the year. I could see them pulling a stinker in one of those maybe.
Right.
I think they're at Seattle still, if memory serves me correct. So
that's true.
That's a tough place to win in Seattle.
The only good thing is for San Francisco, there's a decent chance that Pittsburgh's going to be running out C-Batch behind center this week. So
that's true.
That may help out.
Yeah, that's true. But hey, they've won. They've won without Roethlisberger before.
Right. Now,
and James Harrison's overrated.
He completely is. There's something out there that I'm going to classify as being a hipster take that I've heard, that when you talk about teams that could possibly take out Green Bay, well, at Frank Gore, if he can control the clock for 40 minutes, you ice Aaron Rodgers on the sidelines, you're not buying it.
No.
Okay.
San Francisco, look, no one saw this coming to their record. There's going to be, the way I figure and the way I'm looking at it, I'm going to miss out on my preseason predictions. I'm going to be wrong on 3 playoff teams. San Francisco's, I had Arizona winning that division, as you remember.
Okay. I had St. Louis.
Yeah. Now, a lot of people did, though. A lot of people did. I didn't like them because I didn't think they could sustain the jump in net wins they did from last year, going from 1. Now, they've been killed by injuries.
Right.
I'm not sure Spagnuolo is a long-term answer as the coach there. Seattle's been a lot better, by the way, than I thought they'd be. Arizona came along, and plus Arizona and St. Louis both had brutal schedules to open the year.
They did.
Arizona's picked up a little bit late. I completely undervalued the coach in a lockout season. I think San Francisco, though, no way next year do they match this win total. I'm just not. But they're one of those teams that they've already peaked, I think. Don't you think they've peaked already?
Possibly. Well, not only that, the division has bottomed out.
Yeah, but, they, to their credit, they hadn't played when they were, going into that Baltimore game.
Right.
They'd only played like 1 division game.
Right.
So I just think that they've peaked. It's kind of funny. Most of the year, people have them as number 2. New Orleans is definitively better than them in the NFC. If they do fall and have to play in the wild card round, San Francisco's not a tremendous home field advantage. I could see them actually losing in the first round of the playoffs potentially. Yeah. I'm really starting to sour on San Francisco.
Yeah, I can understand that. Before we move on, just a quick thing here that I want to ask you about on this level. I broached it to you off air. See if you guessed who this is. There's a team that it occurs to me in the AFC. It's always in it every year and doesn't get the job done in any of these years. And there's maybe reasons for that, but I see teams under other circumstances that would be called chokers for their inability to reel it in. As a matter of fact, Philadelphia, who many times has gotten further than this team, really has had the rap of being a choke team. And yet this team has kind of gone under the radar in recent years, not getting the opprobrium of a San Diego or somebody else. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Well, it can't be Pittsburgh. They made the Super. They've made the Super Bowl last year and won the Super Bowl twice with Ben Roethlisberger.
I'm going to make it easy on you
It's
here.
going to be Baltimore.
Well, in the last decade, the AFC has been dominated by a troika of Indianapolis, Pittsburgh, and most of all New England.
Mm-hmm.
But you look at this here. Baltimore Ravens, everybody looks at them. They won a Super Bowl. Yeah, in 2000, they won their Super Bowl. Their first one before Bill Belichick won it. Bill Belichick was ringless when they won their Super Bowl. Now, part of it is, okay, in the last decade, when it was perceived that they bottomed out, and I think that was then, they switched coaches from Brian Billick to John Harbaugh. It's only been a couple of years now for Joe Flacco in there. So the fact that they've changed coaches, they've changed quarterbacks in that period of time, okay.
They've made the playoffs every year under Harbaugh.
And they have, but don't you think they get more rope than other teams would?
I'm going to tell you why.
Why?
At no point during that, they were, and what's interesting, they were people forget they were a wild card team the year they won the Super Bowl.
Yeah, they were.
Actually, it was an old divisional setup. It was before they went to the current, 8 division format.
Tennessee. They had to win at Tennessee and Jacksonville, right? I think
Oakland. They
Oakland.
actually won.
Oakland, yeah.
It was an Oakland team though that was playing with Bobby Hoying at quarterback. That's how long ago that was, by the way.
By the way, Tony Siragusa with the dirty move to intentionally break Rich Gannon's shoulder.
Yes, I'm glad you remember that.
Yeah.
I'm glad you remember
I was
that.
cursing at the TV when it happened.
But I'll tell you what. Here's why they get maybe that rope you talked about. Mm-hmm. At no point have they really been the favorite to win the AFC. You talk about New England is obvious, or Indianapolis is usually the team that has the target spec. And they've won a lot of road games. They went into New England 2 years ago and won. So, it's kind of like the Jets a little bit, but they're not as big a market, where they kind of go in with maybe lower expected. They're not the favorite to win, and that's why it's like, oh, well, they won 2 road games to get here. Could they really have won 3? And the quarterback is the other reason why. I have a buddy, Chad Rebeck, who just believes that Baltimore is not going to win the AFC this year because Joe Flacco cannot measure up to Brady or Roethlisberger.
Okay.
He thinks there's only 4 teams that can win the Super Bowl. He wouldn't even have Baltimore in this tier. He thinks it's just Green Bay, New England, Pittsburgh, and New Orleans. He thinks no other team has a chance to win the Super Bowl.
I can understand that.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense. You got to wonder if this maybe is Baltimore's year, though, by default. They're going to win the division, which is a huge leg up over Pittsburgh, because that means they're going to play one less game, and that the first game will definitely be at home.
It's a position they're not used to as much.
Exactly.
Right.
And I'm not sold on this New England. I don't think. Again, we talked about in the last podcast. Mm-hmm. I think most people think the AFC champion is going to come from the group of New England, Pittsburgh, and Baltimore. Mm-hmm. Whoever plays Pittsburgh in the second round, I think is going to lose the AFC championship game.
Because car crash syndrome.
Yeah, well, because traditionally for years, people do not play well the week after they play Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh beats up on you. People forget how good Baltimore is, though. Baltimore last year lost 5 games, including playoffs. 2 were to Pittsburgh. They blew a big lead in the playoffs to them. The other one was close.
Right.
They lost at New England in overtime, I believe. They lost at an Atlanta team that was a very good home team. Mm-hmm. And they lost on a short week to Cincinnati early in the year when they were coming off the win over the Jets.
Right.
This year, they had that awful showing against Jacksonville. But I just wonder if by default this is Baltimore's year. Pittsburgh, the Super Bowl loser, they're kind of defying that Super Bowl loser curse. They could actually finish with a better record, or they still can if they win out. Or the same, as they did last year, even if they lose once. But Super Bowl losers, I'd have to go back. I don't think Super Bowl losers have won a playoff game the following year more than once in the last 12 seasons.
Well, and with Pittsburgh being a wild card team,
they'll probably draw the AFC West winner, because Pittsburgh, the 4 versus 5 matchup in the AFC is going to be AFC West winner hosting AFC North second place team.
Right.
Okay. We'll get to Tebow later on in the West.
Yep.
But Pittsburgh will be favored to win that game. It's not a favorable matchup for Tebow if he's the one who if Denver indeed wins the West. With Baltimore in the I don't know. And here's the thing. If they don't win it this year, I think you might start to see that, because that'd be a several times in the playoffs not making it.
Right.
They'd be, does this work? Joe Flacco, do they need to make a move at quarterback? I think if they don't get there this year to the Super Bowl, not necessarily, they wouldn't be favored to win it if they play Green Bay, but if they don't get there this year, I think you'll see some of those questions.
Okay.
So that was my very long-winded answer to a very honest
All
question.
right. Yeah, I just thought that was an interesting thing that had occurred to me recently.
They right now are my highest-rated AFC team.
Really? Okay.
They are my highest-rated AFC. They swept the Steelers.
Okay.
Okay, they looked very good, obviously, in that opening week. And they haven't missed a beat without Ray Lewis.
They're lucky? They're lucky they won't play any crap teams in the playoffs because they've played down to the level of bad teams this year.
Yes, you should never judge a team by its worst performance.
Yeah. So, strangely enough, only playing good teams in the playoffs may work for them. Mm-hmm. They'll be on their A game every week. The third tier, this is much like it is on the NBA one here. This is the bell curve, big fat middle.
Can we mention a team?
Sure.
That we didn't talk about at all on the second tier? Houston.
Oh, Houston. Yeah.
It's amazing. Do you know that right now, people don't talk about this? They're in position for home field advantage in the AFC. No one believes that they will get there.
I don't believe that. I don't believe that at all.
I am a huge buyer on Houston moving forward. Aren't you? Don't you think that they're a team, because of their this is Houston's year, and it never happens. This year, they won the division, kind of by default. I think when the Manning injury became a huge problem, people saw, okay, this has to be their year.
The hipsters in Tremont here in Cleveland are all very happy this year.
Yes, well, I picked Houston, and they're going to get there. But when they were decimated by injuries. And now Wade Phillips has to take a leave of absence.
Yeah.
It was announced this morning. God, you feel bad because they may not win. They could get matched up against the Jets potentially in the first round of the playoffs, and I could see them losing that, especially with Yates at quarterback. But, man, I'm telling you, eventually the clock has got to strike midnight on New England and Pittsburgh and Baltimore. It already may have on Indianapolis. I'm telling you, moving forward, if there's a team whose stock I'm buying in to be a premier team in the AFC for years to come, Houston.
And how amazing. If that is the case, then I think we can say Gary Kubiak is the Alex Smith of head coaches.
Look, he kind of got locked out. I didn't think they could make that leap with Gary Kubiak as the coach.
He has survived so many near-death experiences.
Yeah. By the way, Wade Phillips, we talked about it, how he improved that San Diego, I believe it was our preseason show, how he improved that San Diego defense the first year he was there. They took a defense that was like last in the league and took him to middle of the road.
Right.
How about the job he's done here?
Yeah.
Took him last to best. And Mario Williams is hurt.
Yeah.
Another bad look. This team has just been crushed. Andre Johnson's missed half the games.
Yeah.
Houston is a team to look moving forward. I feel bad. I don't think they'll win a playoff game this year.
Can we give Coach of the Year to a coordinator? Is that possible? And for a guy who's a crummy head coach, though, but boy, is he. Talk about the Peter principle.
Yeah.
Wade Phillips, unparalleled almost as a coordinator.
That said, I think they could lose outright to Carolina
Don't
this week.
Don't ever put him in charge.
I think they could lose outright to Carolina this week.
That could happen. The third tier.
I have them ahead of San Francisco, by the way.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. I could see that. I would have, by the way, if they had Matt Schaub. I still just am a little bit leery because now it's going to be a little more one-dimensional as far as that offense goes. Although
you run the ball better than Houston.
1-2, great 1-2 punch at running back, no question. Third tier, as is the case with the NBA, going from teams on the north end of it that are near the cusp of the super respectability of the second tier, the teams that are toward the bottom of it here that are near the fourth tier, not so great teams that shouldn't be looking for the playoffs necessarily. Number 8, the New York Jets. Number 9, Atlanta. 10, Detroit. 11, Denver. I can't believe I have them higher than you. We'll talk about them a little bit. 12, the New York Giants. 13, Oakland. 14, Tennessee. 15, Dallas. 16, Cincinnati. 17, Chicago. 18, San Diego.
I'm surprised and very pleased with you that you have the Jets at 8.
Okay.
You know a quarterback who gets way too much scrutiny? Mark Sanchez. Guy's got, 10 touchdowns the last 3 games?
Well, here's the thing. I was thinking about this today as I was kind of preparing to talk to you about this. Like Aaron Rodgers, and you didn't think that's a name I would compare him to.
No, I didn't. I'm very intrigued where you're going with this.
All right. This is for different reasons. Like Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Rodgers is inarguably, as great as Greg Jennings is, Aaron Rodgers is Green Bay's best skill position player. Mark Sanchez.
I love where you're going with this.
Very likely.
I love where you're going with this.
Is their best skill position player, but it's by default because they have a lot of
overrated people. Kills. Can I just jump in because I'm frothing at the mouth because I love what you're saying?
Okay.
Mark Sanchez has the most overrated set of skill position players in the league. Mark Sanchez isn't overrated. His weapons are way overrated. Santonio Holmes and Plaxico Burress are not as good as advertised. Sean Green had a good game last week, but it was his first good game since the playoffs of 2 years ago, and LaDainian Tomlinson's like 52.
Yeah.
Okay?
And Sean Green has not done it yet to the level that I've expected.
Look,
Granted, their line hasn't been as good this year.
Mark Sanchez, look, he makes some boneheaded plays. The pick six against Denver was bad.
He does.
Okay, but he owned up to it.
Right.
But Mark Sanchez I've seen this guy win games.
Right.
He won the game against Buffalo. When he rolls around, he is a great elite level passer when I'm out of the pocket. One of the best.
Right.
Only Rodgers and maybe like a Big Ben or better when they're rolling. I'm telling you right now, I'm so glad you said that because people kill me for defending Sanchez all the time. And his skill position players, people are like, oh, he's got Santonio Holmes and Plaxico Burst. Like, those guys are overrated.
Collectively, I mean, I think they're collectively above average, but they're not anything to write home about.
No.
And Santonio Holmes, I mean, let me make the Jason Worth joke for him, but again, he's a number one receiver only because he gets paid like it. He's not consistent enough.
Number two receivers being paid like number ones. God, what a good point.
Thank you.
The Jets now.
Because I made it.
Yes. The Jets look like they're going to be look, you know that they were my pick before the year to win the AFC.
Right.
They have not gotten to that level.
No.
I thought they were going to be a 12-4 team, be the top seed in the AFC. They're not going to get there.
This is about what I picked them for. Another year right behind
it looks like
England.
It looks like they're going to be in that familiar position, that 6th seed. They're going to have to win all their playoff games on the road.
Yep.
Do you think that they? I mean, obviously we'd have to see the matchups, but do you think that they are any kind of threat to go to the Super Bowl?
I don't think they're a great threat, but I don't think it would be the greatest upset in the history of the league if they made it. Simply because this AFC picture, you have a number of
would you pick them if they played at Houston in the first round? Because I think that's going to be a matchup.
I would pick them against Houston.
Yes, so do
because I just think
the pedigree. Now the defense. Do you know what else is overrated on the Jets? The defense. People wanted to kill. Look, Mark Sanchez was not on the field against Tim Tebow when Tebow drove 95 yards for the game-winning score.
Right.
That Jets defense almost gave away the Buffalo game as well.
Yeah.
After Sanchez throws his fourth touchdown pass to take the lead, they almost let Buffalo move down the field in a minute.
They're definitely overrated. We've talked all season long about the perennial teams in the AFC from the last year or two that we said would be back, that are going to be back. New England, the Jets, Baltimore, Pittsburgh. But nobody's dominant in that bunch. San Diego, after looking early on that this could be a year when they really step up, has been a year when they've actually somewhat kind of regressed.
Yeah.
And you can't really, again...
But you know what? It's one of those things, addition by subtraction.
Yeah.
You know, this is at the bottom of your tier here.
Right.
They're going to rid themselves of North Turner. And that's a positive.
And A.J. Smith, probably.
Yeah, and that's a positive.
Because they're Siamese twins for whatever reason.
I'll probably pick San Diego to win the division again next year. Look, we talked about that when the Manning injury went down, I've said this every podcast I've done with you about the AFC, that I could not imagine any reasonable-minded person not picking before the season the same 6 teams to make the playoffs in the AFC. New England, the Jets, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, Houston, and San Diego.
Right. Once Manning
Only
was
San
out.
Diego is going to fall short.
Yeah,
that's
true.
The other, I mean,
that's true.
And you say don't count them out yet. I'm not abiding. They won't. They'll gag.
They're not out of it, but all right. Let's talk West. Let's talk Denver. And for as much as, by the way, I googled today. I googled Tim Tebow rugby offense, and there are some other folks out there that have picked up the baton from what I've said about what they're running there in Denver. It's not just me. But again, so far effective. But it's a matter of
let's embrace diversity. Let's say, look, why do you have to win a certain way?
But here's the thing, though.
I know there's a mountain of evidence and
law of averages.
Yes, and my model, ironically enough, which says okay, teams that win a lot of close games, the dam will eventually break. I don't know, man. Look, I don't want to be one of these guys who God wants the Denver Broncos to win. That's silly.
Yeah,
but something, man, it is like when you watch a Denver Broncos game. Don't you just think like everything is going to go right? When Matt Prater lines up last week against Chicago for a 59-yard field goal, which is a massive field goal. Okay, the record's 63.
Right.
Did you not have you ever been more sure of a 59-yard field goal being good?
59 is kind of like 29 in the thin
Oh,
air.
I
but,
knew
you know.
you would say something like that. Come on.
I just didn't want to disappoint you.
Yes, come on. Look, Denver, first of all, it's very ironic, considering our previous conversation and conversations of that you have Denver higher than I do.
I can't believe that, but
I have
do.
them at 13.
Okay.
I believe they are going to win this division. If they lose, it would be this week to New England. I think other than that, I think they'll beat a depleted Buffalo team, and I think they finish with Kansas City, who's also depleted.
They will. They'll house those two. All right, so with that being their remaining schedule, San Diego probably can't catch them.
Yeah, so I think because they've got, a 2-game edge right now, Denver?
I think so, yeah.
It's 2 games. So Denver, look, here's the thing, and I'm going to echo this again with Tebow, because we don't need to yell. There's no shows out there that yell about Tim Tebow.
Right.
You can say what kind of offense they're running all you want. It's archaic. It's antiquated. And look, you know me, I bag on the Big Ten all the time in college football. What is the other option besides turning to Tim Tebow than what they're doing?
No.
What was they were a 1-4 team that was in obscurity, and looking back even further, they were 7-24 their previous 31. This was a terrible team, a team going nowhere. And people could talk about it's the defense, it's this. Where was it? People thought before the year that this was one of the worst defenses in the league. Now, they were not counting on Von Miller being as good as he is, probably the defensive rookie of the year.
Yeah.
And they got Doomerville back, who was missing almost all of last year.
Our senior editor, Jason Jones, refused to believe they wouldn't take Marcel Darius. He was pissed.
Von Miller was one of those guys who seemed to have high bust potential, because I watched A&M games and I didn't really know a lot about him, but look.
You put him in there with Doomerville. Oh.
Yeah, it's tremendous. And it's just, to me, look, is he going to be a long-term answer? I don't know. But to me, people who are still on this kick, he's not an NFL quarterback. How can you not be an NFL quarterback and have his record? They're already, the anti-Tebow contingent, they've already changed the question without admitting they were wrong on the first one. He is an NFL caliber quarterback. He may be untraditional. He obviously is untraditional, but he deserves to be the starter. He took a team that's 1-4. They're now 8-5. Now, my model, again, says they will stink next year because they have 3 overtime wins. All of their wins are by 4 points or less.
Right.
And typically the ball bounces the other way from season to season. So, in other words, look for me to pick San Diego again next year. But they're going to win the division, and I'm telling you what, man, I'm not betting against Tebow. Until I see him done for the season, I'm not betting against him.
He's had a run like this, hence there's no way that he's not a top-flight NFL quarterback, sincerely Scott Mitchell. But
his run wasn't that good, though, was it?
It was the year in Detroit. My fish went and dropped a whole boatload on him,
I remember that, but it wasn't as long. It was kind of the middle.
Actually, no, I'm sorry. It was the other way around. He came in, My fish got rid of him after that. Yeah.
I don't even think they made the playoffs that year. Did they, Miami, with him?
No,
we'll have to
I
check
don't
that
think
out.
so. I don't think so.
Look, he's going to take. To me, look, I think he deserves to be a Pro Bowler.
Here's what I'll say. I'll say, because I've been a critic, I'll go so far as to say, which, by the way, puts me diametrically opposed to our senior editor, Jason Jones, I'll say it can't be ruled out that he is a legitimate NFL starting quarterback going forward. The thing I will say, though, and this is a sign of how unbiased I am, I'm a lifelong Cleveland Browns fan, and yet I can say that I feel a twinge of sympathy for John Elway, because if you're John Elway and you're sitting there,
he hates Tim Tebow.
Three words: law of averages. John Elway has to plan for what is feasible, not just now but in the future.
Yes.
And John Elway has this guy strapped to him like a suicide bomb by the fans, the unwashed masses, of Denver. So it's a thing where if you're John Elway and you're looking at something that the entire history of the league does not basically bear that this is going to work for you, and modern history of the league, because if it was 1952, this would certainly be plausible.
Can he improve?
You have to bet the farm that he's going to improve. That's all you can do.
Here's I think you have to keep, and it's kind of wild analogy with the suicide bomb, but
right.
It's valid. Don't you just have to keep it on until it blows up?
You do.
Yeah, because you cannot replace him.
John Fox said he would be screwed in a regular offense. His words, not mine.
Here's people say, oh, well, he's played against some really bad offenses so far. But hasn't he played against some good defenses, too? Chicago Bears, yeah, okay, they don't have Jay Cutler and Matt Forte, but they still have Lance Briggs and Brian Urlacher. They've got a good defense,
They got
okay?
a decent defense. It's not as good as everybody thinks. I've heard Phil Simms, who I agree with on this, say...
Oh, I don't like Phil.
He's referred to them as a bend but don't break defense. I think that's accurate. They're very good. They're not as great as people think.
I think they're I think they're an above average defense.
They're above average, but I mean,
They're
here's
a top
the
10 defense.
Bottomish top 10, but top 10. Yeah, but my point is, every time they have a good defense, everybody thinks it's the reincarnation of the '85 Bears, and they're certainly not.
Whenever you talk about the Bears, everyone just yearns for '85.
Right.
Okay, but listen to this. He played one terrible defense.
Yeah.
Minnesota. Lit him up.
Right.
Was throwing balls over the yard. I think he can improve. And
I think so, yeah.
To not to agree with Skip Bayless, but I will. They don't run the same offense in the first quarter that they do in the fourth.
That's true.
And why don't they just run? Just try it. What do you have to lose?
Yeah.
I mean, look, you had nothing to lose when you put him in as a starter. Just open it up and just have, that's what I was telling. Some people get so mad about Tim Tebow. What do you get so mad for?
Right.
Just ride out the wave, man.
Right.
It doesn't have to be, things don't have to be long term. What if, unbelievably the impossible happens and they go to the Super Bowl?
That would be something.
Well, I mean, is that bad? I mean, it'd be great for the league. I mean, McMahon couldn't book it better.
Well, exactly. By the way, and I can't move on from Denver without mentioning this. I think it's kind of rare that you see this at this skill position in particular. It's pretty common at quarterback. When you look at Jim Plunkett, for as much as I loathe the midget mullet Flutie, he had a late career resurgence. You don't see it that often at running back. Let's take our hats off to Willis McGahee, who has had a phenomenal year out of nowhere.
Yeah, he had. Yeah, he was written off. I mean, he was a guy that was laughed out of Buffalo. You know, I mean, I always loved. Wasn't he that he's like, there's no good-looking women in Buffalo, and they came out. They had 3 illegitimate children during his time there. It's like, Jesus, what if there was some good-looking women?
Yeah.
But
blew out both knees against Ohio State as far back as the 03 Fiesta Bowl, and look at the career that he's had. Possibly, and I'd have to look at his numbers, possibly with this career or with this year, putting himself back into at least cusp Hall of Fame consideration. Possibly.
I definitely would say no first time.
For the first time.
Yeah.
We'd have to look at it beyond that.
But here's the thing, too. They traded away Tebow's best receiver, potentially, with Brandon Lloyd.
Yeah, it's true.
I mean, he's got a bad receiving core. So what are you going to do? To me, just ride the thing out, man. Keep riding that train, see where it takes you.
Okay. Looking at the fourth tier here.
Do you agree, though, that they're going to win the division?
At this point, yeah. You mentioned the remaining schedule. I think they're going to.
Yeah, Oakland... I was surprised that Oakland played as well as they did. After I thought Palmer was really washed up.
Yeah,
they've been killed the last 2 weeks by Miami. And who did they play last week?
Green Bay. They're going to get exposed by a lot of teams out there. And by the way, Dallas at 15.
Okay, we're different. Let's
exactly what I said.
I'm sorry.
They were.
Let's hit it up.
They are who Dennis Green thought they were.
No,
they're
I
a
disagree.
gutless team, great skill position, talent, but shallow.
We're not moving to the fourth tier. I'm not letting you.
All right.
Because let's take a look.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I have the Giants at 9th right now, okay?
Okay.
I have one spot.
I have 12th.
One spot ahead of the Cowboys, so I have a 10th.
Okay.
For those of you keeping score at home.
Neither one of those teams is anything to write home about.
I disagree.
I mean, Eli Manning offensively.
Here's the thing. I have
the
Giants 9th. I do not believe they will make the playoffs. I believe Dallas will win that division. It's going to come down to the last game.
Right.
Because even if the Giants have the harder schedule, they've got a tricky spot against Washington this week. The Redskins can compete. They'll usually lose, but they'll compete.
Right.
And then they play the Jets next week, the Giants do, and then they finish with Dallas. Dallas has Tampa Bay. If they lay an egg, Jason Garrett may not make it out of town. He may get fired before the plane. And then next week they have the big revenge game against Philly.
Okay.
Gutless. And then the Giants. So even if Dallas is able to build up a game lead before then, it won't matter because the Giants, if they would win within tiebreaker. I've got Dallas winning. Who do you have winning the division, Dallas or the Giants?
At this point, I got the Giants winning it. And I don't think a whole lot of the Giants relative to the other powers in the NFC.
They competed against the Green Bay. I think the Giants are not a team you'd want to play. I don't think they'll make the playoffs.
Yeah, see,
I like the Giants better than I like Atlanta or Detroit, both of whom I have making the playoffs.
I like the Giants only by default. Their run game has been uneven. Their defense has been uneven. Eli Manning has been out of this world.
Yeah, his best year as a pro.
Yeah.
I used to hate how whenever I'd say, you know who's overrated is Eli Manning. People are like, but he's won a Super Bowl. I used to hate that, but I'll tell you, he's having his best year.
Right.
He's much better than the guy who won the Super Bowl.
Right. I mean, he basically, when he won the Super Bowl, he was basically just a rich man's Brad Johnson. But he's moved beyond that. He's had a great year. Dare I say, a Peyton-esque kind of a year.
He's probably the fifth best quarterback in football.
He probably is. Side note, what an amazing year. Historic, I'll use that word again, for quarterbacks. We hear it because of Rodgers, and justifiably so. He's the best of them right now. Drew Brees. Amazing, even by his standards. Eli Manning, the way he has stepped up. Brady. This year,
the rules. It's the era. I mean,
okay.
I think it's a product of the era.
It might be.
You can't breathe on a receiver anymore.
It might be, but this is going to go down as one of the greatest
it's a good
passing
point.
years ever for the elite passers.
I
just think Dallas is a gutless team.
Well, they might be.
Less than the sum of their parts. They're always less than the sum of their parts. I just see
Rob Ryan, your buddy's gagging, isn't he? His defense is gagging.
I told you that guy's horrible.
I have a little leg on my face.
Defensive coordinator.
He's just throwing a lot of clipboards now, isn't he? And putting his hand through his hair.
He's a complete media creation because he looks like a head coach, and everybody buys into it. It's one of the shallowest things I've ever seen. It because he looks like a head coach. He's from Central Casting.
Really?
He's awful.
They say the way he looks means he won't be a head coach.
No. Because he's passionate and he's gritty and he's fiery and he's got the long hair flowing. That's all that crap. All that marketing crap. I mean, he's not like a conventional-looking head coach. Ironically, you know who's the most conventional-looking head coach from Central Casting of all time? Probably the worst coach in NFL history, Butch Davis. Was there anybody who looked more like a coach on the sidelines than Butch Davis?
Well, he didn't look like a physicist, I'll tell you that much.
He had a John Wayne kind of countenance to him, but it's a different kind of Central Casting.
Here's the thing, though. I like Dallas and the Giants, though, better than Atlanta and Detroit.
Oh, see, I don't.
I don't buy either of those teams.
Atlanta's just
definitely
solid.
don't buy.
Atlanta's just the picture of solidity.
But like the Hawks, they're not going to win anything. Atlanta, okay, they got these solid. To me, look, do you agree that those will be the two wild cards?
Atlanta,
Detroit. Because remember last time we talked.
I've said it all year. Now I think although I think I had New Orleans as the wild card and Atlanta as the division winner. But the fact remains, I had both of them in there, and I stand by that.
You did, and I had Philly and Dallas both making out of the East.
I had Philly winning the East.
Obviously. So we're going to both be wrong on Philly. But look, I'm really sour on this Detroit. I hate Detroit, I've decided. I think they might be my least favorite team.
Okay.
I think they play a dirty brand of football. I think this Jim Schwartz is overrated.
Okay.
I don't like Ndamukong Suh.
So you're not saying may the Schwartz be with you?
No.
All right.
Now, it's going to be interesting. Atlanta, here's the thing about them. Okay?
Yeah.
Had never produced back-to-back winning seasons before the Matt Ryan, Mike Smith era.
Okay.
Okay? It's now going to be 4 straight winning seasons onto them.
Right.
If they don't win a playoff game this year, is Mike Smith gone?
Oh, that would be insane. They're smarter than that. They're smarter.
Isn't
than
it
that.
because that's from a franchise that hasn't had a lot of success. They made that one.
You're bringing my Baltimore thing over to the NFC. Is Atlanta going to be looked at that way?
Well, I think. See, it's so funny when people like rip Tony Romo and Mark Sanchez as being overrated. I think they're just over talked about. Is the problem people have with those people?
Right.
I think a guy like Matt Ryan is overrated. What's he ever won?
I don't. He's young. He's a work in progress.
Well, so are those other two. I mean, Mark Sanchez isn't, a 10-year veteran.
I don't think it's fair to bag on any of them to that extreme. When you're throwing
and
in that young.
And here's the thing. I brought this up, and it'll shut people up real quick, this anti-Sanchez crowd. Who's got the better skill position players, Matt Ryan or Mark Sanchez?
Matt Ryan by a mile.
Yes.
Roddy White is a top 3 or 4 wide receiver in the league.
Thank you.
And Michael Turner is a top-tier running back. No question about it. Matt Ryan has more to work with. But I think he's doing very good with what he has. I do appreciate the job he's doing. Mike Smith, no, I think that would be insane. He's the most successful coach in the history of the franchise by any measure already.
I know, but what's interesting is they would have, if they lose in the wild, I think they'll be the top wild card. I think they're going to get that 5th seed, probably play the East winner, which I have as Dallas.
They'll go in and house them.
You see, that's what you think.
Yeah.
You and I will probably have to do a podcast, so I'm going to disagree.
Okay. I think
that could be. Could that be a coach gets fired match? By the way, losing,
possible, yeah.
I'm telling you. Look, I'm not saying it's right.
Right.
I'm just saying, will it happen?
I'm saying no, it won't happen.
Arthur
to
Blank
Smith,
seems like a nice man.
Well, and Thomas Dimitroff is too smart for that too. By the way, too, Since I got the Giants winning the East, that would be the Falcons playing them. I still see the Falcons going up to the Meadowlands and getting it done. I'm going to stick with the Falcons
them winning
no
on
matter
the
what.
road. I just they kind of stink on the road.
I mean, they're a dome team, but they're just. I mean, they don't really have any glaring weaknesses.
They would probably rather play Dallas than the Giants.
Very possibly, but the thing with the Giants, why they don't impress me, they're very Sybil-like in terms of their running game, their defense, who's going to show up. By the way, too, for all the mouth-breathing, moron Giant fans that were blasting the draft pick of JPP, and I said at the time, great pass rusher, just because you rubes in New York who don't watch college football don't know what this guy can do. You know what? Who was right, man?
That was a great pick.
I was right.
I thought they were against that pick locally.
They hated it, dude. They hated it. I was looking at the message boards.
I thought that was a great
Who's
pick.
this JPP that played 9 games in there? And the funny thing is, our friend Ken Palmer from Giant Insider, who is a quasi-regular with us here, I asked him, or was it him or no? It was Evan Roberts from FAN. I asked Evan Roberts. I said, Evan, I don't get it because Rutgers is in the Big East also. He played against Rutgers. How can these people who presumably also watch Rutgers, and he goes, Rick, you're giving these people too much credit. They don't know who Rutgers plays. They looked at this thing that said 9 games in the Big East. He played for South Florida. Who the heck are they? All those mouth-breather Giant fans that thought that it was a bad move can suck it. Because I was right and the Giants were right in making that move. I'm just saying it.
He played very well last week, didn't he?
I don't want to put myself over, Kyle, but
Chicago done.
Dunzo. Yeah.
It's funny. Last time we did a podcast, they had not suffered all the injuries. Remember, they had. It's funny. I read off the schedule, and you're like, because neither of us really were a big fan of theirs all year, and I read the schedule. We're like, oh wow, I think they're going to make it. They went 0-3 against the AFC West.
But you know what, though? But that's the thing, though. And I think I said at the time, I'll have to go back and play it and see what I said. But I think it was along the lines of they've defied the odds by winning games they shouldn't win. They will probably lose games that I find completely implausible in a vacuum. Yeah. What could be a better explanation than that Kansas City game?
Yeah, the lost on a fluke Hail Mary.
Yeah.
Tennessee, we said they were a pretender pretty early. Cincinnati, same thing. Hey, what did I tell you about Cincinnati? There was a chance when they were 6-2. I came on this program and said, look, do not be surprised if they go to 6-6.
Yeah.
They were a miracle comeback against Cleveland away from that happening. Yeah. And then they big loss last week to Houston.
Here's what I want to know. I know they got off to a 6-2 start, and that affords you a certain cushion. How do they lose 999 of their last 1,000 games? And I still see that stupid graphic on TV every week. If the playoffs ended or were today, Cincinnati would make it. How is that even possible? I know 6-2 pads. Now they're out of it, Kyle.
Yeah,
but until a week ago,
they had the tiebreaker.
Putting up the graphics on TV, Cincinnati would make it. I don't care.
They were in position.
Yeah, that's just.
Well,
ridiculous.
they were just going by the records. They weren't saying who they thought was going to be in it.
That's just ridiculous.
Well, I didn't like them either. I said they would fall apart.
Cincinnati.
They'll probably be. By the way, they will probably win this week. They'll play St. Louis on a short week, so they'll be 8. They're going to win. They're going to be 8-6. They're still going to be in prime position.
Right. Mitt Romney's record of public service that thinks the Bengals are a deceitful fraud. Yeah. All right,
they will not match. I think they will not match this year's record next year.
No, they won't. They'll regress. Fourth tier. Not much to say probably about these last couple tiers here. 19 Arizona, 20 Philadelphia, 21 Seattle, 22 Miami, 23 Kansas City, 24 Buffalo. Some of these teams here this year, Buffalo, Philadelphia, they've had joy, they've had seasons in the sun, but a lot of them have just kind of regressed at this point. Meanwhile, I guess Arizona's come up a little bit, Seattle's come up a little bit, Miami's come up a little bit.
Yeah. It's kind of this is when you're right. I think the divide. See, I would still have Philadelphia right with San Diego in the very frustrating team category.
That's a tough call.
It's like from a talent perspective, they're better than a lot of the teams above them, the Cincinnatis, the Tennessees, but they'll always find ways to lose. Arizona, look, their season went very much the way I thought it would. I thought they would get off to a slow start. The schedule was tough, and they're winning at the end. They could match. I said they would win the division at 8-8. They could be at 8-8, but no chance to win the division. So, I think they're okay. I still don't know if Cobb is the long-term answer there.
I don't know if he is. They need to do a better job.
They're winning with John Skelton.
Right.
Who is not the long-term answer either.
They need to do a better job on talent acquisition, but I've been saying since well before he got the job there, Ken Wisenhunt's one of the best minds in this league. He's the main reason they have the record that they do.
Seattle has shocked me. I thought they were going to be the worst team in the league.
I did too.
And they're going to match. They're going to match last year's record.
They're pretty bad.
And they've taken themselves. But Coach 'em up Pete could have been reunited with Matt Barkley, and they're not. And they're going to not be in position to get him anymore.
Coach 'em up Pete, though. But
they need a quarterback, Ricky.
They do.
That team could be okay. Marshall Lynch is the real deal, I think, at running back.
Right. But that's why I told you previously I wasn't taking him seriously because of Tavares Jackson. Now, the thing is and part of it is, too, with the chicken or the egg, what causes it. I mean, some of those games, I say it's because the Giants stepped on their own Johnson. I say it's because Baltimore choked. Mm-hmm. You're saying it's because that's a tough place to play, whatever.
It is.
There's some of those games I'm just still going to refuse to give them credit.
That is a tough place to play.
Yeah.
You don't want to go to. They have a tremendous home field advantage, which keeps them from being a real stinky team. I thought they were going to be the worst team in the league. They were my pick for the worst record in the league.
I wouldn't have said worst, but I would have said close.
Miami was a team that it was kind of funny until last week when they just got blasted by the Eagles at home.
That was.
And by the way, Stephen Ross, your boy, sabotaged that team intentionally.
He did.
He wants a quarterback, and I'll tell you who. He's not going to get luck, obviously.
No.
He wants RG3 on a week that RG3 wins the Heisman. And he's like, oh, man, we're starting to win too many games. Are we going to take ourselves? He fired Sperano to have them. He wants them to lose out. Because if they lose out and they only have 4 wins, they'll be in position. By the way, because St. Louis and Minnesota are going to draft 2 and 3. Right. They will not take quarterbacks.
Right.
So you want to be 4th. If you're 4th, you can get RG3. I smell setup. I smell sabotage. The Miami Dolphins are a team who I thought would be one of the worst in the AFC. I looked pretty smart when they were 0-7, but they've played a lot. They're better than. I think the AFC East next year is going to be a tough division because history's, the law of averages say New England and the Jets have to take a step back eventually. Buffalo's going to be better next year. Injuries crush them in the second half. And Miami is not as bad as their record indicates.
RG3 to Miami, I would love to see
They need a superstar. They want to bring a superstar quarterback and a superstar hire coach.
I would love
that guy's
to see
a jock
that.
sniffer, that Ross.
Right.
And Kyle Ross, Stephen Ross.
I would love to see RG3. Very rarely in life do you get to kill 2 birds with 1 stone because the Dolphins are my 1B team. The Browns were my 1A. I don't want Colt McCoy replaced yet.
No,
so
they have to draft a receiver. The Browns.
Yes,
they have to draft a receiver.
Yes, I want RG3 in Miami satisfies both needs for me as a football fan. That would be tremendous. And my boy, as I like to call him, Tony Clifton, definitely deserved better than he got from the Dolphins here. The 5th tier, the dregs of the league. 25 Carolina.
Carolina does not deserve to be in this grouping. I don't care what their record is.
Yeah, they've lost close games. They've
outgained their opponents. You talk about a team I'm a big. I think Carolina next year.
Yeah.
Look, this is a long-term predict. I think they can win the division next year.
Over New Orleans and Atlanta.
Yes, you heard it here first.
Ooh.
You know the history of that division. It's not going to happen this year. Keep in mind. Lockout, rookie quarterback, rookie coach. New Orleans and Atlanta were in a very strong position of power. Law of averages again say, hey. You can't make the playoffs every year in New Orleans. You can't make the Tampa Bay's regress. I'm telling you, last place teams in that division have a tremendous history of improving. Now, what's interesting is they may not finish. They may wind up passing Tampa Bay. Well, it was falling off a cliff.
Ron Rivera had been waiting for a head coaching job for a while. Very good mind.
And it helps when Cam Newton falls in your lap.
That's true.
Number one.
That's true.
I'm telling you.
He's been a great defensive coach for a long time.
Yeah, if he can rebuild that defense, which is what he was brought there to do, and they can get him a nice – because Steve Smith's not – he had that big resurgence, but he's not going to be young. He's going to get old. He already is old. You give him a nice receiver, Cam Newton, I am a big Carolina fan moving forward.
In a great wide receiver draft. Like the Browns – they need to take
give him an Alshon Jeffrey, maybe?
Oh, yeah. How about that? 25 Carolina, 26 Jacksonville, 27 Washington, 28 Cleveland, 29 Minnesota, 30 Tampa Bay, and still sliding rapidly, 31 St. Louis, 22 Indianapolis.
32, you mean? By the way, has there ever been a year where the number 1 and number 32 teams are just so definitive? Like, there's no debating who the best team is. There's no debating who the worst team is.
Right. That's true. By the way,
and no debating that St. Louis is the second worst team.
Couple weeks ago, I'm just curious. When Indianapolis went to New England and was getting like 3 touchdowns, I was on Indy.
Oh yeah, you have to.
That was
you never
lay
21 in an NFL game.
Yeah, that was a.
By the way, 2 backdoors and 2 little Jim Morrison action, little backdoor
exactly.
man.
You knew they were going to backdoor.
2 weeks in a row. They did the same thing last week against Baltimore. They were losing 24-3, scored a touchdown on the final play. That's a brutal beat.
Yeah, it is.
But you shouldn't lay. But you deserve to lose if you lay 16 in an NFL game.
It definitely is. The bad teams here on this level. I know we touched on just briefly here, but you and I agree. Colt McCoy, got to get him a weapon before you can really judge him here. Best wide receiver draft since '96, one of the best ever. You got to, like Carolina, you got to do that for McCoy.
If you draft, look, you have to give him one more year where things aren't as topsy-turvy.
Justin Blackmon, anyone?
I think St. Louis takes him.
Okay.
I think he's all. That's the problem. People. Some of these people, oh, they have Brandon Lloyd. He's real good. Well, I don't think St. Louis is going to look and say, we've got Brandon Lloyd, so we should let Cleveland have Justin. That's not the mentality.
How about Greg Childs or somebody? Yeah, I mean, there's any number of good possibilities.
Yeah, there really is. So there's a lot. You have to see he has the worst receivers in the league. You have to give Colt McCoy one more year. If he doesn't show anything next year, then I think you have to start thinking about, okay, maybe we get rid of this guy.
Right.
But, yeah, there's really no debating this. I have the same teams as my bottom 26, 27. But my bottom 7 is almost I think identical order, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I have Tampa Bay a little bit higher. Yes, they are still falling. Minnesota, what could have been? I told you I thought this team would be okay this year.
Yeah.
And I didn't count on them blowing 3 20-point leads, though, early in the year. And I thought Donovan McNabb would give them something.
Yeah, it was.
And I didn't think Joe Webb would be starting.
I just saw the trajectory from last year. It was a team where everything was getting away from them, letting Sidney Rice go. We talk about the need to have number one receivers there. Again, I
don't know if I like that coach Leslie Frazier either.
Yeah, I'm not so sure. I mean, he's a very good defensive
but
mind.
Their defense has stunk.
Yeah, that's
true. Since he took over. Their defense has stunk since he took over the head coaching job. You wonder if he's maybe that Wade Phillips.
I was just going to say, Wade Phillips, he may be. He may very well be.
I think they'll be better next year, though, Minnesota.
Peter Principle, possibly.
I think, just because they can't be worse. But
I don't think they're going to be much better. But looking at this, all right, you and I agree Green Bay coming out of the NFC. Probably both agree still winning the Super Bowl.
Yes.
In the AFC...
You said New England before the year. Do you stick with it?
From the beginning of the year, and you've given me a chance at every monthly interval to back off of that, and I have declined to do so. And, again, they're in a grab bag. I think that it's much like what I said about the NBA Western Conference semifinals, how I think they could be classics. That AFC second weekend.
Yeah.
If it's that combo of New England, the Jets, Pittsburgh, Baltimore... Pedro Morales could be ready for any kind of action. But I'll tell you what, man, I'm going to stay on New England. I just think they can outscore anybody enough. I know what you're saying about Baltimore, but here's the thing. You got to put up 21 points to beat New England, and I don't see it. As crappy as New England's defense is.
I said the Jets before the year. I am changing.
Okay.
I am going with I think I said this in a previous spot. I'm going with Baltimore.
Okay.
Because I don't think it'll be Pittsburgh, and New England has not won a playoff game since 2007.
Right.
I'm going with Green Bay over Baltimore.
All right.
The Super Bowl that I picked last year, by the way.
That was the hipster special in the summer of 2010, man. All the hipsters were on that one. All right. Well, do you agree with me that Baltimore would need 21 points to beat New England, and therefore
they could
you must
get
feel
21 points on New England?
Okay.
I think they could.
All right, simply because New England's offense is so or defense is so crappy. Last note on Baltimore.
Denver, I think, will get 21 points on New England's defense this week.
Right. With the exception of Ray Rice, who's an all-world talent at running back, do you agree with me also as we're evaluating Flacco? Do you agree with me that there's at least a little bit of the Sanchez syndrome here? Those wide receivers aren't. I mean, Torrey Smith is stepping up okay, but Anquan Bolden, like Santonio Holmes, is not a classic number one.
He's thought of as a number one because he's paid like a number one.
Yeah.
He's not a consistent number one.
Guess what, folks? So was Alvin Harper the second half of his career. So I'm not comparing.
That was one of the worst free agent contracts ever, Alvin Harper to Tampa Bay.
That was.
I think I drafted him in my fantasy team that year, back in the pen and paper days. But... Look, by the way, they scored 37 on New England a couple years ago in the playoffs, 2 years ago in the playoffs, in New England.
Yeah,
Baltimore could get done.
They did. Okay. All right. So both of us are saying Green Bay in the Super Bowl, and we'll be monitoring this again come January. Thanks very much, Kyle. A lot of great stuff that we covered here tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you again for having me, Ricky.
Thanks, pal.